Snow fell in slow, quiet sheets, the kind that made everything look peaceful, even when it wasn't. Outside the largest shopping mall in the city, Christmas music drifted through the glass doors. Laughter, warmth, light. Inside, people hurried past glowing storefronts with bags in their hands and joy on their faces. Outside, on a cold concrete bench just beyond the automatic doors, sat a man everyone avoided seeing. His name was Walter Reed, 71 years old, Army veteran, homeless. Walter pulled his thin coat tighter around his body, though it barely helped. The wind cut through the fabric like it wasn't even there. His fingers were stiff, cracked, trembling as he tried to warm them by breathing into his palms. In his lap sat a small cardboard sign. The ink was faded from rain and time. Veteran, just need a hot meal. No exclamation marks. No guilt. No begging. Just the truth. Every few seconds, the mall doors slid open. A blast of warm air spilled out. The smell of cinnamon pretzels, coffee, roasted nuts, Christmas. Then the doors closed again, and the cold returned. Walter didn't look up much anymore. He had learned that eye contact made people uncomfortable. Parents pulled children closer. Couples whispered. Some offered quick apologies as they passed, as if poverty were contagious. He understood. He always understood. 3 hours earlier, a security guard had told him he couldn't sit too close to the entrance. Bad for business, the guard had said, not unkindly. Just tired. Walter nodded and moved back exactly 6 steps. That was the kind of man he was. Not a troublemaker. Not loud. Not angry. Just forgotten. Across the street, Christmas lights wrapped around trees like glowing veins. Walter watched them flicker, memories drifting in and out of focus. A younger version of himself. A uniform. Boots hitting pavement. The sound of helicopters. Orders shouted over gunfire. He touched the small metal object in his pocket. A dog tag. The only thing he'd never lost. A group of teenagers burst out of the mall laughing, nearly bumping into him. One of them glanced at the sign, then away, embarrassed. Another dropped a few coins into the snow without stopping. Walter nodded in thanks, even though they didn't see it. His stomach twisted. He hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. He checked the time on the old watch strapped to his wrist, stopped at 6:17, broken months ago, but he knew what time it was anyway. Christmas Eve. Night was coming, and night was dangerous. Walter shifted on the bench, wincing as pain shot through his lower back. An old injury. Shrapnel. Doctors once promised it would heal. It never did. Inside the mall, a tall man in a tailored coat stood near a high-end jewelry store. His name was Jonathan Hale. Billionaire. Investor. Quiet philanthropist, though few knew that part. Jonathan wasn't shopping. He was waiting. His driver was late. His phone battery was dead. And for the first time in years, Jonathan was standing still long enough to notice something he usually didn't. The cold. He glanced toward the doors as they opened again. That's when he saw Walter. At first, he saw what everyone else saw. An old homeless man. A sign. A problem that felt uncomfortable to acknowledge. Jonathan looked away. Then he looked back. Something about the way Walter sat caught his attention. The posture. The stillness. The discipline in how he held himself, even while shivering. That wasn't weakness. That was training. Jonathan stepped closer to the glass, watching as a woman walked out, nearly slipping on the snow near Walter's feet. Walter reacted instantly, standing despite the pain, steadying her without a word. She thanked him quickly and hurried off. Walter sat back down, breathing hard. Jonathan felt something tighten in his chest. He pushed through the doors, the warmth vanishing behind him. Snow crunched under his shoes as he approached the bench. Walter noticed the shadow first. He looked up slowly. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Jonathan did. "Cold night," he said. Walter nodded. "Yes, sir." Jonathan hesitated. "Have you eaten?" Walter didn't answer right away. Pride flickered, then faded. "No," he said honestly. Jonathan reached into his pocket. Walter raised a hand gently. "You don't have to." "I know," Jonathan said. "I want to." He handed him a folded bill. Walter stared at it. "Too much. Far too much." "This is," Walter began. "Merry Christmas," Jonathan said. Walter's eyes burned. He took the bill with shaking fingers. "Thank you," he whispered. Jonathan turned to leave. He took 3 steps, then stopped, turned back. "What's your name?" he asked. Walter hesitated. Names felt dangerous. Names reminded people you were real. "Walter," he said. Walter Reed. Jonathan froze. Just for half a second. Then masked it. Mine's Jonathan, he said. Stay warm tonight, Walter. He walked away as his driver finally pulled up. Walter watched the car disappear into traffic. He looked down at the bill, then back at the mall doors. For the first time that night, something stirred in his chest. Hope. But hope was fragile. And Christmas Eve wasn't over yet. Because inside that mall, behind one locked door, a decision was about to be made. One that would change Walter's life forever. The mall began to empty as night settled in. Families drifted toward parking lots, arms full of gifts and laughter trailing behind them like music. Store lights dimmed one by one. Security gates rattled closed. The cheerful chaos of the day softened into something quieter, colder. Walter watched it all from his bench, the world slowly packing up and leaving him behind. He had used part of the money Jonathan gave him to buy a cup of soup from a small kiosk just before it closed. It wasn't much, but the warmth spread through his chest like a memory of home. He ate slowly, savoring every bite, saving half for later. That was how he survived. Carefully. The wind picked up. Snow swirled harder now, stinging his cheeks. Walter pulled his coat tighter, bracing himself for the long night ahead. The shelter downtown was full. It always was on Christmas Eve. He would sleep here. Again. Asterisk inside the mall. Jonathan sat in the back of his car, staring out the window as the building faded into the distance. Sir? The driver asked. Home. Jonathan didn't answer. Walter Reed. The name echoed in his mind like a bell struck once too hard that he opened his phone, plugging it into the charger, fingers already typing. Walter Reed. Army. Veteran. Search results flooded the screen. Jonathan's breath caught. It wasn't the name alone. It was the photograph. Younger, stronger. Uniform pressed sharp. Eyes alert, steady, unmistakable. The citation beneath it made Jonathan's hands tremble. Medal of Valor. Posthumous. Recommendation. Status unresolved. Posthumous. They thought he was dead. Jonathan closed his eyes as he remembered the man who pulled him from a burning vehicle in a foreign desert. The hands that dragged him through sand and smoke. The voice that kept telling him to stay awake, that you're going to be fine, son. I've got you. Jonathan had searched for that man for years, and tonight, he'd walked past him. The car stopped at a red light. Turn around, Jonathan said suddenly. The driver glanced at him in the mirror. Sir. The mall, Jonathan said. Now. The driver nodded and made a quick turn. Back outside, Walter was struggling to stand. His legs had gone numb. He leaned heavily on the bench, pain flaring as he tried to stretch life back into them. The snow was thicker now, coating his boots, his sign, his shoulders. The mall doors slid open again. Warm light spilled out, and this time, it stayed open. A security guard stepped out, scanning the area. Sir, the guard called. You can't stay here overnight. Walter nodded, heart sinking. I understand. I was just about to wait, the guard said, holding up a hand. Someone else was coming through the doors. Jonathan, coat unbuttoned. Expression urgent. Eyes locked on Walter. The guard looked confused. Mr. Hale? Jonathan didn't slow down. He crossed the distance between them in seconds and stopped in front of Walter. Walter Reed, he said, voice unsteady. You saved my life. Walter stared at him. Snow clung to Jonathan's hair. His breath came fast. I've been looking for you for 30 years, Jonathan continued. I didn't know if you were alive. Walter's knees buckled. Jonathan caught him. They stood there in the snow, billionaire and homeless veteran, holding each other upright. The guard took a step back, unsure what he was witnessing. I didn't think you'd remember me, Walter said softly. Jonathan laughed, a broken, emotional sound. I've never forgotten you. I just didn't know your name. Jonathan turned to the guard. Open the staff entrance. Sir, I own this mall, Jonathan said quietly. The guard's eyes widened. He nodded immediately and rushed to unlock the side door. Warm air rushed out like a promise. Jonathan helped Walter inside. Inside, the mall was silent now. Empty corridors. Holiday decorations glowing softly in the dark. Jonathan led Walter toward a private office near the management wing. You don't have to do this, Walter said. I don't want to cause trouble. You already gave me my life, Jonathan replied. Let me give you a night. Inside the office, Jonathan handed Walter a towel, a blanket, hot tea. Walter's hands shook as he wrapped the blanket around himself. Jonathan made a call. Then another. Each one ended with the same sentence. Make it happen. Tonight. Walter watched him, confused, overwhelmed. Jonathan, he said gently, I don't need much. Jonathan met his eyes. I know. That's why you deserve everything. A knock at the door interrupted them. The mall manager stepped in, nervous. Sir. Jonathan turned. I want the shelter director here. And my legal team. The manager blinked. Tonight. Yes. Walter looked down at his hands. For the first time in years, he felt warm. Safe. But something still gnawed at him. Jonathan, he said quietly, why now? Jonathan hesitated, then answered honestly. Because if I'd gone home, he said, I would have spent another Christmas pretending I didn't owe my life to a man freezing outside a mall. Outside, snow continued to fall. Inside, a door had opened. But the night still had one more test. Because redemption isn't just about giving. It's about being seen. And Walter Reed was about to be seen by the entire world. The snow stopped just before midnight. Not all at once, just enough to let the city breathe again. Inside the mall's private conference room, the air was warm and still. A small artificial Christmas tree glowed in the corner, its lights reflecting softly off polished glass walls. It was a strange place for a reunion that had waited 3 decades to happen. Walter sat in a leather chair that felt too expensive to touch. The blanket rested around his shoulders like armor he hadn't worn in years. In front of him sat a cup of tea, still steaming. Across the table, Jonathan Hale stood near the window, phone pressed to his ear. Yes, Jonathan said quietly. I want it reinstated. Backdated. Full honors. No delays. He listened. Because he's alive, Jonathan continued. And because he never stopped serving. He ended the call and turned back to Walter. They'll be here in the morning, Jonathan said. VA representatives. Media. The whole thing. Walter's jaw tightened. I don't want cameras, he said. Jonathan nodded. Then there won't be any. This isn't about publicity. A knock came at the door. The shelter director entered, breathless, coat dusted with snow. She stopped short when she saw Walter. Oh my God, she whispered. We've been trying to find you. Walter managed a small smile. I was right outside. The words landed heavier than he intended. She looked away, ashamed. Jonathan cleared his throat. We're arranging housing. Permanent. Close to medical care. The director nodded eagerly. Of course. We'll fast-track everything. Walter leaned back slowly, overwhelmed. I don't need much space, he said. Just somewhere quiet. You'll have that, Jonathan replied. And a key. That no one can take from you. Another knock. This time, a young assistant stepped in holding a folder. Sir, she said to Jonathan, these are the records you requested. Jonathan took them and handed them to Walter. Inside were copies of his service file, complete, corrected, honored. The medical recommendation, finally approved. Walter's hands trembled as he read. I was told it got lost, he murmured. It did, Jonathan said. But not anymore. Walter closed the folder. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he stood, slow, careful. He faced Jonathan and straightened his back, shoulders square, eyes steady. He raised his hand in a salute. Jonathan froze, then returned it, not as a billionaire, as a man. The clock on the wall ticked toward midnight. Christmas Day was minutes away. Jonathan broke the silence. Stay here tonight. Tomorrow we'll go to your place. Walter hesitated. Old habits whispered warnings. Then he nodded. All right. Outside, church bells rang faintly in the distance. Jonathan walked Walter to a private guest room tucked behind the offices. Clean sheets, soft light, a window overlooking the quiet mall. Walter paused in the doorway. I used to think Christmas was for people who belonged somewhere, he said. Jonathan met his gaze. It is. Walter looked at the bed, then back at Jonathan. Merry Christmas, he said. Jonathan smiled. Merry Christmas, Walter. Jonathan left him there, closing the door gently. Walter sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. Then, carefully, he lay down. For the first time in years, he slept without fear. Outside, the city stirred as Christmas morning arrived. News would break later. Questions would be asked. Systems would scramble to correct what they'd ignored. But for now, none of that mattered. What mattered was this. A man the world forgot had been found. Not by a spotlight, not by a headline, but by one door opening. On Christmas Eve,